Wow. I don't know if Trevor's frozen or if I'm frozen. So it might just be me live streaming now. I don't know how to change that.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Portable Trevor here, and today we have a very special guest that I've been looking forward to. He's written for shows such as Final Space and Clarence, and he has a hilarious Twitter account. Please welcome Ben Mekler. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. What have you been up to since, quarantine and all that stuff?
Oh, same as everyone. Being depressed, eating junk food, working from home, Zooming every day for work, trying to be funny on Zoom. Not easy. Yeah, a lot of work, my wife's having a baby in a month and a half, so a lot of figuring out how to do stuff like patch a ceiling in what will be our nursery and install new closet doors. So it's been busy.
I hope it's not been
And
raining at
then,
all.
existential dread. Raining? No, not in LA. Never.
Never.
Yeah,
That's one good thing if you ever have a unpatched ceiling, I guess, to be thankful
sure.
for.
Well, the ceiling would have been okay. The roof would have been, yeah, would have been more of an issue
Hmm.
if I had to patch that. I'm not going up there. I don't know what I'm doing. The ceiling was fine. I like went to repaint the ceiling and there's a little bit of tape and I was like, oh, I'll just pull this off and paint under it. And it ripped a hole through all of the compound all the way across the room. So that was like a
Ben
week of my
Mekler,
life.
comedy
2
writer
weeks.
and roofer.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about that. This seems like a really big time in a really big time in your life right now. You know, you're gonna have a kid, and
Hmm.
but you have a lot of projects you've been working on. And it's actually
Yeah.
took a while for me and Ben to schedule because he said he was super busy and he was having a baby, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it's everything in entertainment, in my experience, this isn't everyone's experience, is feast or famine. You'll have like 6 months a year where there's no work for you. You just came off of a project. There's nothing out there. You do a week on a project here, 2 weeks on a project there. Like as a writer, it's pretty difficult career. And then usually you'll get offered like seven things at once, and you have to pick like one of them, and then you try to do the second one. You're like nights and weekends, and so you're usually working on multiple things at once. I have a writing partner. That means we are usually working on four or five things at once because we can be more productive, but we're also splitting like the wages of a regular writer. So yeah, it just so happens that right before the quarantine, I started on a new show in which my writing partner and I are running a writer's room for the first time. So the writers have never actually all met all in person for the first time on Zoom. We met them all. We interviewed them for the show, but day to day, we're running a writer's room over Zoom. It's our first time doing that, and it's all over Zoom during the quarantine, which is weird. Um,
I bet.
and then in addition to that, we're writing a pilot for a studio, or writing a movie, we're pitching a movie, we're pitching another show. So there's always many different things we're doing all at once. And then yes, the fact that I'm having a kid in like 7 weeks complicates it all even more because I'm like, I got to get this stuff done so that I can just
Mhm.
focus on my baby when she's here. So yeah, it's been a wild time. Just in addition to like the existential dread of a uncontrolled pandemic
Mhm.
in the United States. Yeah.
So you've written for a lot of pretty prolific shows, but one I'd love to talk about is Final Space. I
Hmm.
love the show. Been a big Olin Rogers fan ever since I was like in middle school, pretty much. So to see
Sure.
him, make a TV show, that was like really cool. And I saw that you wrote for it, along with
Yeah.
your hilarious Twitter account, which we'll get into later. Um, but yeah, tell me like how does one become a writer for a show like that? Because you've not really had any animation experience prior to writing, have you?
No, don't know how to draw. Never been involved in animation before. Kind of my path was that I was intending on pursuing certainly like live action, like adult comedy
Mm,
and animation in general is kind of like an accident. When I first moved to LA, I wound up being neighbors with a bunch of people who were aspiring artists who were trying to get into animation. And so through them, I met a lot of people in the animation business. My writing partner and I were writing script samples, trying to get represented, get an agent, a manager, so that we could get sent out to meetings to hopefully staff on TV shows so that our full-time jobs could become working on TV shows as writers, or making movies. And so we were writing all these sample scripts, and people were enjoying them, but kept asking us if they were meant to be animated or live action, which is probably a sign right away that we may have been more suited for animation at that time in general anyway. And so it was kind of just a lot of things happening all at once. Like I was saying before, we around the same time were taking meetings just through friends who had become executives in animation, saying like, oh, you should like try to do one of these shorts that Nickelodeon's doing for this program, or like, oh, you should come in and like pitch us a show. I'm an executive over at like Cartoon Network now. So we were kind of doing that on our own. Then we got represented. And the first things we'd actually written for television were these two like super late night, very, very adult specials for Adult Swim that were both live action. And so we'd had a little bit of TV work on our own, just like through friends offering to let us pitch on projects they were developing that ultimately got made. And so we'd had a little bit of TV work. We knew a lot of people in animation. We'd had these two scripts that were felt very animated. And we got an agent. The first show I think they sent us out to staff on was Final Space, and we got a meeting. And we just got lucky enough that that was the first show that also hired us. Mm-hmm. We went to the meeting with Olin, with David Sachs, the other showrunner, with the executives from Conoco, one of the production companies, Conan O'Brien's production company, mm-hmm. from a couple of other production companies that were involved. I don't think there were any like TBS executives there, but usually you have to meet kind of everyone involved, every production company, the studio, the showrunners. So we went to a meeting that was just like a bunch of people, and the two of us pitching in about a half hour, like why we deserve to be on the show and trying to convey what we could bring to the show. And it actually seemed at first like we weren't going to get on. I can't remember what it was, but I think we'd kind of gotten a call that was like, yeah, I don't know if they're going to have room for you. It seemed questionable. And so we assumed we just didn't have the job. And then I want to say like a month or two later, we got a call that was like, actually, they're hiring you. And so my writing partner was at a production company at that point as like an assistant to a development exec. And so he got to leave that job to become a TV writer. I was writing and directing comedy sketches at this company called Nerdist, and had been trying to, move up to doing longer form stuff for a long time. And everyone knew that. So thankfully everyone was excited for me and not angry when I just left.
That's good.
And yeah, that's been our career since. We've been writing full time. But actually before Final Space, I did write a little bit of animation. I wrote a couple episodes of Clarence before Final Space. Mm-hmm. And that was just because I reached out to the head of story, this guy, Spencer Rothbell, over Twitter, actually, and was like, he'd followed me and we were liking each other's tweets. And so I just DM'd him and was like, dude, I love Clarence. I would love to write on Clarence. General rule, don't do this. Usually that doesn't work out. Thankfully, I think we kind of both saw that, like, regardless, we were becoming friends over Twitter. We had a lot in common. We got along. And so we went out to lunch. He read a script, and I got to write a couple of episodes of that show. And so I think that also helped mm-hmm. with Final Space. But yeah, we've never been staffed on a live action show. We've written some live action stuff for TV. We've written live action pilots that we've pitched or developed. We've written a live action movie. But primarily our like work has been in animation, which is funny because I truly cannot draw for shit, like at all.
It's okay. I can't either. That was actually one of my first professions that I wanted to get into. And then I got into high school and I was like, I'm not good at drawing. So I just gave that up completely. So something that's always fascinated me, Ben, is people that like write for shows and they like weren't the original creators. Like they're not the people that, made the characters. Like for Final Space, all these characters are in Olin's head. Like he knows all their motivations and like what they're about. So how does someone like you that gets like kind of brought into it and they want you to be a writer and you have all these characters that like you didn't create? I feel like I'm word vomiting here.
Well, to answer the question I think you're asking, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's an interesting concept. I wouldn't say misconception, but it's an interesting way that like kind of people perceive film and television versus how it's
Mhm.
actually made. It's a team sport.
Mhm.
So in the case of Final Space, in the case of pretty much every TV show, certainly there are outliers. Um, when a writer's room is hired on a show, certain elements have been figured out, but definitely not everything.
Mhm.
So usually when you start on a show, there's a Bible and there's a pilot. It's not always the case. It's usually the case. A Bible is a document that could be 5 pages. It could be 50 pages. It's usually a lot less. But it's usually a document that says like, here's a page explaining like this character, their background, how they behave, what their relationship is to the other main characters on the show. Here's this character, here's that character. And it's usually just a handful of the main characters, whoever's going to be your main cast. Then kind of an example of, or kind of an outlay of like what the first season will be and what the general story of the series will be. Usually a couple of examples of what episodes of the show would look like. And generally speaking, that's kind of it. And that's kind of all that's
Mhm.
like figured out. And it's usually pretty underwritten because everything changes once you start writing a show and you really start getting into the scripts. Things just kind of shift and move around. And then generally speaking, the showrunner, the creator has written a pilot episode, and that episode is what you read before you show up for work on your first day as a writer staffed on the show. So in the case of Final Space, and in the case of pretty much every show I've been on,
Mhm.
usually there's like a loose idea of like, here's what will happen this season. Characters are going to start here. We want something like this to happen midway through the show. We also see a couple of beats where like this happens, maybe this happens. And then at the end of the season, this is how things will end, because this is what season 2 will more or less kind of be about. And then you say, so episode 1's written. Let's start talking about episode 2. And you spend weeks figuring episode 2 out. And a lot of the characters that become main characters, that become major supporting characters, that and a lot of the choices those characters make, they all change as you're going through episode by episode because, you know, you start digging into the second episode and you're like, oh, it'd be really interesting if, you know, Gary in this moment didn't do what we planned on having him do, but instead chose to do this thing. And that would create this consequence. Now this person hates him. We can carry that over to the next episode. And so as a group, you are figuring that story out. You're figuring those characters out. You're figuring out even what's going to happen in each episode, even though, you know, there's an episode that's written by Christopher Amick and Ben Mekler. We didn't just come up with the entire story for that episode. The whole writers room came up with it together.
Mhm.
And the role of the creator or the showrunner is kind of to be the final word, to guide things and to say like, I want to be more like this, or like, oh, a little bit more like this. But everything is kind of built up on the work of the room as a whole. Um, you know, the show where I'm running the room right now, like it's definitely not my show. There's an executive producer above me. It's not his show, it's our show. It's everyone's show. There are definitely, you know, more auteur writers. There are a lot of TV shows that are written by just one writer or primarily by one writer. But it really is like, and in animation, it's including the artists, the editor of the episode. It's including the directors, the character designers. There's little bits and pieces of story and of character that come from all of these people. And that's what really makes a television show. So if you go in with that mindset, which is definitely learned, I think a lot of people don't really know till they're in it. Then you kind of just go into the fresh mind. You go in with the beginner's mind. You soak up what the showrunner, who's hopefully a good leader and a good communicator, is hoping to do with this show and what they want it to be. And then you just try to do the best version of that and then try to bring your own voice to it because there's a reason that you were hired. I know certainly when we were staffing for the show that we're on now, what we were looking for was writers who had a voice, that were going to bring a unique voice that was going to make the show better. You know, who's someone who's really good at comedy, who's going to help us really bring the humor through in these characters and in this story? Who's someone who's really good at action, because we're going to have a lot of action on the show and we want someone who's going to be generating just exciting ideas and things that are going to be fun to watch in action. And so that's kind of it. I mean, there's definitely a big part of it, which is like you are certainly taking the sandbox designed by this person and working within its confines. But the best case scenario, I think, is that you get a really good team together and you're all working together to make the best version of this nugget of a great idea that a studio decided was worth putting a lot of money into to make.
No, you definitely answered my question. Thank you. That was
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone? Because for someone like me, I am honestly terrible at like pitching ideas. For like a show on Final Space, was there anything like you ever wrote down that you thought, "Ooh, this is going to be risky. I'm not sure if they're going to like this." What advice would you give to people like me that are not the best at like presenting ideas, but it sounds really good in your head?
You have to be unafraid to present it. And then it's also your boss on any show's job to make an environment where you feel comfortable pitching it. No bad ideas is definitely like the ethos that we try to bring to the room, that I think is what should be present in any writer's room. And I think generally tends to be the standard, is that you need to have an environment where you can just pitch anything, because even the worst idea is going to have a good idea in it. There's a reason that it came to mind. And it has some value. So even if you pitch something that sounds dumb to you, even as you're saying it, there's probably a reason you thought of it, and there's probably a version of it that's worthwhile, or a piece of an idea inside of it that is either pointing out a flaw in the story as it is now, or highlighting an opportunity that is worth pursuing in a story. So it's tough. I mean, like, if you have trouble presenting ideas, it's just something you have to learn to get better at, because it's the whole job. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I work at for everyone like listening, I work at DDP Yoga. I work for Diamond Dallas Page, and I told Ben I would tell the story on air. But so Dallas came into the studio one day, and just as a joke, I ordered this cardboard cutout of Danny DeVito and just had it around the office. Everybody's like, "Oh, look, Danny DeVito cutout," and I was like, "Guys, we got to do something with this." So Dallas walks in, and this is like a great example of why I'm awful at pitching ideas. I go up to Dallas, I'm like, "Hey Dallas, I have a really good sketch that we could shoot really quickly if you're down." And he's just like, "All right, bro, let's do it." So we go into the studio, and I'm like, "Okay, so I have this cardboard cutout of Danny DeVito, and I thought it'd be really funny if you're trying to teach him DDP yoga and he's not doing it, and then you just get mad and kick him." So Dallas is not a millennial, or he's 64 years old. So I pitch him this idea, and he's just like, "Bro, that is not funny at all." And he just leaves the room. And a little harsh, but it was just, I was just like, well, this is something I need to get better at.
Yeah. Wow. That's a burn. I don't know if I would have recovered from that. Yeah.
It was pretty bad. And typically,
Maybe he
I
just
think
doesn't like Danny DeVito. Maybe he had a bad experience with him in the 90s.
Yeah, maybe.
You know? Did you ask him about his personal history with DeVito?
I didn't. I was just like, you don't
They
like
might
this?
run in the same circles.
Yeah, he was just like, "I don't get the joke. I don't get it. I don't think it would be good." So I was just like, "All right, whatever, man." So I just moved on. Wasn't that bad of a burn, but it's whatever.
How often do you guys make videos at DDP Yoga? Do you film something and put it up every day?
So I started in January, and we have a lot of videos that we just like haven't edited, like a lot of testimonials like of weight loss and everything. So we're still editing those, but since Corona, really not that much. So mostly it's just everyone gets in the building, we edit, and if Dallas wants to shoot something, then we shoot it.
Right on.
Yeah, man. So back to you, because you're the guest. So whenever you're writing for these shows, like, has there ever been a time whenever the episode that you wrote for aired and it was just like really satisfying? It like came together, like, in whenever you were writing it and you were like, "Yes, I did that."
Definitely. Episode 9 of the first season of Kipo is like my favorite thing I've written that's actually been produced. With that episode of that show, an animated show on Netflix, we were just trying to do a lot. We were trying to have a lot of action. We were trying to have a lot of emotion. We were trying to have a lot of comedy. It's like, extremely sad in one beat, and then we try to make it really funny the next. And usually that can result in like tonal whiplash. It can be just not fun to watch, not sad enough, not funny enough. It doesn't always work. We worked really hard to make it work. The artists and the animators really did an incredible job with that episode, and really brought everything out that we wanted brought out, and actually plussed it and made it 10 times cooler. There's an action scene we'd written where we were like, man, we wrote this so cool. I hope the artists can keep up. And then they made it at least 100 times cooler than anything we'd actually put on the page.
Yes.
Yeah. But that episode's definitely for me like the platonic ideal of something where we put down on the page was not just like adapted perfectly by the production team, but was made better by every single person involved, from the musicians, from the score, to the editor, to the directors, to literally every aspect of it. Everyone who touched it plussed it. So it was extremely satisfying to watch, because it was like, Jesus, this is like exactly what we were trying to do, which is already hard. And it's an even better version of what we dreamed it could be. So I really love that episode, how it came out. I'm super, super proud of it. So yes, that feeling exists, and it feels really, really good when it happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me about Kipo a little bit. Tell me how that all came together.
We rolled off of Final Space, and a harsh truth about the business is that they say that like your first job's really, really hard to get as a writer, because you're competing against a zillion people. And they say that your second job's even harder, and that's definitely true. Especially with animation. We'd written on Final Space job ended, but the show wasn't going to premiere for like a year. So we had nothing to show for ourselves, but we're going out for more jobs, and had left our like comfortable full-time jobs from before Final Space behind. So we'd kind of been going through like a rough patch where we weren't working on anything else. And as we got to the end of that year, I think it was like 6 months probably between the jobs. Like I was saying earlier, feast or famine, all of a sudden we were offered this show Kipo that we had met on, that we were blown away by when we had the meeting, but it had been so long ago we assumed that they just didn't want us on the show. Sometimes you just don't hear back at all. You just have to be comfortable with that. So we assumed we didn't have the job, but we had loved that meeting. We'd loved the showrunners that we'd met with, and we'd loved all the materials that we'd seen for Kipo. Because at that point, they had not just written the first 2 episodes of Kipo, they'd also had storyboard animatics for them. So we got to kind of watch the first 2 episodes. We were like, God, this is such an amazing show. We want to work on the show so bad. We were also waiting for them to renew Final Space. So around the same time we got offered Kipo, we got offered season 2 of Final Space, and also had the chance to meet on a show that was like an adaptation of like one of my favorite things from when I was a kid. So it was like a dream project meeting with like a hero of mine. And we were like, oh boy, okay, so we need a job really bad. So it's probably not good to risk it all for the meeting. We had a great experience on Final Space. We want to move up, but this Kipo show, just like, it seems like the kind of thing where like we already got to work on Final Space. This Kipo thing seems so special, and I think we'll regret it for the rest of our lives if we don't take a chance and like work on it. So we wound up working on Kipo. No regrets. It was like, I'm just so blown away by what we got to do with that show. 2 seasons are out right now. And it was just such an amazing experience, because it was like a pretty long-term job. We got to be really involved throughout the whole process of our episodes. We got to meet a lot of the artists, work with them every day. Because of the way production worked on Final Space, it was different. The writing happened first, then the animation happened. So we didn't really interact with any of the artists at all. Because of the way production worked differently on Kipo, because of a million things that I either can't talk about or wouldn't make any sense if I tried to explain them. We got to be just a lot more involved through every bit of the process. We got to see the art, see the designs, weigh in and say like, hey, we're planning on doing something with this character 7 episodes from now. So if she had this element of her costume, like it would actually pay off really nicely later. And you have those conversations with the artists that really made like everything better at every single step. Obviously this stuff was happening on Final Space too. I don't want to make it sound like it wasn't happening at all. We just weren't involved in that step. So it was really exciting for that reason all throughout Kipo. I think we told a really, really, really unique story on that show that did a lot of. One of the things we did on the show that I didn't really realize until after the show kind of came out that we were the first. There's a character that comes out of the closet on the show by just saying I'm gay, and not realize that in kids animation, characters had been gay before, in a very coy way, or without actually just saying the words. And so, I don't know. We were just doing things the way that felt best for the story and for the characters and for the world that we were trying to set that show in.
Mm.
That seemed like the kinds of things where on any other show we might have gotten a no or had to have a conversation about, but DreamWorks really let us do whatever felt right, and whatever was the most exciting on a day-to-day basis. And then when it came out, it was very gratifying to see that we were doing things that really spoke to an audience, things that audiences had wanted to see, things that they had not expected to see in a show. It was just an extremely satisfying experience for a writer because it was everything you really want to happen once your work is released for the public.
Mm.
We had fans, people were drawing fan art. It was just, it was very exciting. And then when the second season came out, you always worry about a sophomore slump or if you're going to disappoint people with how the story continues once they've already started to attach to these characters. But not at all. People really took to what we were doing with the second season, and it felt really good to kind of evolve that story and have people react positively to where we were taking it. It was just a fantastic experience. I really loved everything about that show.
That's awesome. I was
Mhm.
telling one of my filmmaking buddies, I was like, I don't think I'll consider that I've made it until I have fan art of something that I've made. So that must have been really cool to like scroll through social media and see
Yeah,
people making fan art.
yeah. Of course, there's also hentai, which was less cool, but the fan art was definitely cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. And
Uh,
so what does I don't know if you can answer this, across the board for everything that
sure.
you've worked on, but what does a typical day look like in a writer's room, and what does it kind of take? Like, what are some of the qualities that you think you should look for in like a good writer for a TV show?
Sure. Broadly, everyone shows up at the room and bullshits for like 45 minutes. Because ideally, you're curating what will be a really tight knit group of friends that you're going to spend more time with than your partner
Hmm.
every 5 days a week for weeks, maybe months, maybe years
Hmm.
of your life. So usually, like, yeah, you spend some time getting coffee, chatting, catching up. Um, and in my experience, at some point, someone says something personal, and someone else says, "Hey, you know what? What if like a character on the show had something like that going on?" And that turns into a conversation about
Yeah, I've
something that
always
could
pictured
happen
it's a
on the
bunch of
show.
what
Yeah.
ifs.
It is. Yeah, to start. But usually there's like a lot more structure to it, to be honest. I mean, you have like some
Hmm.
blue sky time at the very beginning of the show where you're just saying, like, season one, blank canvas. What do we want to see? We know who the characters are. We know the story we want to tell. What would we like to see happen? Um, and you start to kind of just explore ideas and follow avenues. Like, what if halfway through this character betrays everyone? What would it look like in the back half of the season? You kind of talk through that. You're like, okay, well, going back to the original version, like, how is this different? Is it better than what we were going to do, where the character doesn't betray everyone? Like, what would the rest of the season look like that way? You do kind of pursue different avenues, but that doesn't usually last particularly long because studios like to not pay writers for as long as possible, so they want you handing scripts over as quickly as possible once you start.
Hmm.
Um, so generally speaking, once you're really like into a season, which would be the case for like what I'm doing now, um, you get into the room and there's usually an episode that you're trying to break at any given moment, and that means you're saying, okay, end the last episode. They found out that the person they've been chasing this whole time is actually on their side. So, what are we doing in this episode? Um, we know that in the next episode, we really want to have them on a like river. So, how do we get them to the river by the end of the episode? But at the beginning of the episode, they are suddenly paired to someone they never thought they'd have to team up with. So, usually, with that being like the goal, you'll spend a week or two as a group kind of saying, like, all right, in the first act of the episode, they have to talk to this person, figure out who they really are. What's their backstory? Why would they team up with them? How are their goals the same? How are their goals different? In like the second act, we're going to explore them having to do something together and it doesn't go well. And it's because their personalities clash. So like they have to fight, they get robbed and they have to fight these thieves, but they don't get along. And then in the third act, they have to get what was stolen from them back. So they have to work together. And this is where they really bond. So by the end of the episode, they got their stuff back in there at the river. And then like you kind of talk that vague structure through for like a day or two or three. And then you dig into like, okay, so we know that in Act 1 they're getting to know each other. What do those beats look like? And you dig in a little deeper. And of course, people are also pitching jokes and people are pitching cool like visual ideas. And you're incorporating all that stuff as you're kind of getting into the granular level of scenes. You're like, what do they do at the very beginning of the episode? What do they do at the very end? What's like a good cliffhanger at the end of the first act of this episode? And then after a week or two of breaking that episode, you pick a writer in the room. There's usually like a cycle you're going through and you say, okay, Trevor, this is your episode. So you're going to go to outline. So you're going to not be in the writer's room with us for the next like week. You're going to write a first draft of an outline of what we just described, but with a little more detail. Then you're going to bring it back to the writer's room where probably the showrunners are going to read it. Maybe everyone will read it. Really depends on who's running the show and how they like to run the show. Make any tweaks they want to make, and then send it to the executives who will then give notes. If there's a different TV network airing it, they'll give notes. And then you're going to wind up doing a rewrite of that outline. As the room is moving on to breaking the next episode, you're just waiting to get some notes so you can go back off and do a little rewrite on that outline. And then once everyone's happy with the outline, you start writing the script. And again, you write the script, you bring the first draft into the room, showrunner's going to read it, have notes, possibly do their own rewrite of it. The entire writer's room might look through it and do a punch-up pass, which is just like looking for any opportunity to bring clarity or add jokes to the script. And then cycle repeats itself. You send it to the executives, they send notes, you do a rewrite. And this is all happening like at the same time that you're breaking like the next episode and the next episode and the next episode and just sending it off to different writers and then bringing the scripts back. But you kind of see how collaboratively as a group, usually you're kind of figuring out the episode together. And then one person kind of starts to take ownership over it and actually writes out the outline and the script and starts to bring more of their voice and their personality to it.
That's a really hefty process. Like, it sounds like, how long does that typically take to get to that last point?
On the show I'm on now, and the last show I was on, because they were for the same studio, and generally there's kind of a way schedule and the way things work. It's like 2 weeks for an outline, 3 weeks to 4 weeks for a script. So start to finish, it's around a month and a half for each like script, from starting to break the episode, a month to 2 months, I guess I would say, to like just starting to break the episode and delivering like final draft.
I gotcha. So the saying sometimes done is better than perfect, does that ever apply to you whenever you're doing TV shows? Because I imagine like, studios are probably over you like, come on, we need the script or something. And does that ever happen often?
I think that it's easier certainly to go with the done is better than perfect model. And there are definitely shows that do it. I don't have it in me. I wish I did. My life would be a lot easier. And I don't know that I've worked for anyone else who had it in them. Usually what'll happen, to be honest, is if things aren't whatever perfect means to the showrunner, but that person's really invested in their work, you're just talking about nights and weekends to get it to that level. But I mean, my experience has primarily been limited to animation, but you have a lot of opportunities to change and adjust things. You don't ever want to say, we'll fix it in boards. You don't ever want to say, we'll fix it in like redraws for like animation, if it's hand drawn or CG, that's really hard, cost prohibitive, and extremely frustrating for the artists.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's at least comforting to know that if you need to, there is the opportunity down the line if something's just not working once you're actually drawing it, you can still make it a little more perfect. And also, if something's just not working on the page, you can't figure out how to make it work, and it's too far gone down the process, and it feels like fixing it would require time and effort that you just cannot put in, then you definitely can rest in knowing that like there's a whole nother group of creative people that are going to get their eyes on it and going to have a different approach to it. They might be able to figure out a way to fix it for you. a way to make it work. Yeah.
Nice. Well, something else I would like to talk about is your time on Nerdist. It's something that I regularly follow, and you worked there for a while. Can you tell me about your experience on there?
Yeah. Working at Nerdist was awesome. I was pretty much showing up every day and trying to figure out ways to make funny videos with a group of people that I really loved working with. I love being on set. I love directing. I miss it a lot. I haven't gotten to do it in a while. So on any given day, I was either doing my favorite job or my other favorite job. So writing or directing. And yeah, it was cool. I mean, a lot of the other thing that's like, it's part of like the dream is that a lot of the projects we would do would be a question of, okay, so someone has something they're trying to promote and they want to make a video to promote it. So can you think of a funny video to make with an example would be Diamond Dallas Page from Ddp Yoga, who was the very first person like this that I worked with. But yeah, my bosses would come to me and say like, Diamond Dallas Page wants to promote Ddp Yoga. Could we make like a funny video with him and collaborate? And I would say, oh, I'm a huge Diamond Dallas Page fan. I would love to do that. And so I'd come in and pitch like 5 or 10 ideas for what that could possibly be. And then we would make them. It was great. I mean, I'd have people above me that would take a look at the different pitches and say, this one's better than this one, or can we hear more pitches on this idea? And eventually we'd whittle it down to like which idea was best. We'd send ideas to talent would weigh in. But nothing about the process was frustrating because it was also so low stakes. It was like we were just having fun. We were just trying to make good videos. And it was a great job. I loved it. I was there for a few years. I think it still might be the longest I was on any job. And yeah, it was a blast.
That's awesome. Please tell me you wrote the line DDP Yoda.
I did.
Whatever, Dallas. That was a good bit. I remember watching that.
Yeah, I think the like main sketch that we made with him was called Inner DD Peace. And it was like a meditation video that was definitely based on my love of old Goofy cartoons. And he was just game for everything. And then we also did the DDP Yoga video, or Yoda video, which I can't remember like what I can't remember why that happened. I think we had like we were just supposed to do the Inner DD Peace video, and I think he might have actually been the one to like crack a joke about DDP Yoda and like nerd shit. And then we were also filming this show called Nerdist News that he was supposed to just like cameo on to like promote his sketch. And I think he just wanted to do more of like an additional like weird sketch. That's kind of why I asked you if you guys were producing a lot of videos, because he was just so game to shoot as much stuff as possible in like the half a day that he was there.
Yeah, he's great. Like it, when we do have time, he's usually game to like shoot whatever. Like he'll listen to ideas and by the way, Dallas is a great guy. I hope I didn't make him or telling that story didn't come off as like, oh, he's a dick or whatever.
No, not at all.
I just told him like on the whim, like while he was there, and I think it would have been better if I wrote it out or whatever. But yeah, he's great to work with. And something else Ben told me is you actually have done DDP yoga, so I think you can attest to it actually working.
Yeah. I I was getting married like in 6-8 months maybe when he came to do his sketch, and I had been doing P90. As soon as we did the sketch, I was like, okay, well, I really want to know what DDP yoga is. I'm definitely interested. I want to try it out. And he mailed like 5 copies of like the whole package to the office, and was like checking up, like asking for us to like send him our progress photos the whole time. And I only got like a couple of guys in the office to do it, but I've gotten a lot of people in TV to do it since then. And just spreading the gospel as much as I can of DDP yoga to the masses. But yeah, no, I lost a ton of weight doing it. It was great. I really love DDP yoga. I still, every once in a while, when I can actually spare like an hour out of my day for a couple of weeks, I'll still jump back into it. I know there's like shorter ones on there too. But I'm a huge fan. I love DDP yoga. Pro DDP yoga. Everyone watching should do DDP yoga.
You really should. And just because I work there, like I could say it sucked if I wanted to, honestly, but it doesn't. It genuinely works. But that does sound like Dallas checking in on everyone. Bro, you gotta take your pictures before and after. That's my best DDP impression. But Ben, so another thing that you've been a part of that my friend Chase, who actually commented, he's watching. He's a huge fan of Valley Folk, and you're friends with Steve and the guys. We've watched the podcast before. What's it like working with those guys? Because I watched the episode that you were on. I think you were on a couple, and those were so funny. I was on Dynamic
Banter once, and then I did their cats video. Yeah, of the Valley Folk dudes, I actually only know Steve. The other guys I've known through Twitter. And Mike, Steve's co-host from Dynamic Banter, obviously I met when I did the podcast. But yeah, Steve I know socially through my friend Jesse McKeel, who I met on when I was before Nerdist. We actually came to Nerdist together. We have a ton of the same friends, and Steve is one of them. And so I'd known Steve socially for a long time and knew him to be like a super funny, super positive dude. And it's only been in the last like year that I've started like working with him as much as I can on like anything. I had him on my podcast, which is about Mortal Kombat. I went on his podcast, and we're always looking for ways to work together because I think we just gel creatively. I think both of us are constantly just chasing the high of like the Muppets and trying to make anything that's like as madcap fun as that. So Steve's the best. I love that guy. And I really like the Valley Folk. I'd like to do more stuff with those dudes. They're great.
That's awesome. And I haven't listened to your podcast yet, but I love the name Mortal Podcast. Is it literally just about you talking about Mortal Kombat?
Yes. Yes, it is.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I will speak for about an hour about a single Mortal Kombat character with a guest. I'll walk them through the entirety of 27 years of Mortal Kombat lore from the perspective of a single character. I'm not good at Mortal Kombat or video games. I've just been obsessed with Mortal Kombat since I was a little kid, specifically the storyline. So I think I just tweeted like a year and a half ago, like, would it be a good idea to make a podcast if I forced people to talk about Mortal Kombat with me for an hour? And a lot of people wanted that to happen, so I made it. It's been fun. It's been a good time.
Yeah, and you have...
Oh, I think I lost you. Wow, I don't know if Trevor's frozen or if I'm frozen. So it might just be me live streaming now. I don't know how to change that.
Cool. Hey, Ben. Sorry, I apologize for that.
All good.
Cool. What was the last thing you heard?
Which one of us was frozen to the live stream? Me or you?
I think I was frozen.
Sweet.
Yeah. What was the last thing you heard?
I think I was talking was the last thing I heard. I think I said that it was been fun making the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. And you
I
had
didn't hear whatever you said after that.
I think you had a Camille on recently, right?
I did. I had Camille, yeah.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. Camille's awesome. Camille Nanjiani, for anyone who doesn't know him, he's an actor, writer, comedian, stand-up. It was great. He asked me if he could come on. He's a huge Mortal Kombat fan. A mutual friend of ours, Chris Tapley, had been on the show a couple months earlier. So yeah, it was a little hard to find a time because he, like me, is very busy.
I imagine he's super busy.
Yeah, but the quarantine has opened up a lot of people who are usually on camera's availability, so we were able to find a time, and it was great. It was a couple days after, I would say together we helped spread the news that one of LA's hottest restaurants was selling like moldy jam. So we talked about that for a long time.
Nice.
But yeah, it was fun. He's a very enthusiastic guest. He was really happy to be there.
Nice. So Mortal Kombat, like you said, you just love Mortal Kombat. It's from your childhood. What's some other things from your childhood that you take inspiration from in your work?
Like I said before, the Muppets. Definitely like the LucasArts adventure games from the 90s and 2000s. So like Monkey Island and Grim Fandango were huge for me. The State, it's a comedy troupe, that a TV show, Stella, which is like a later on project by some of those guys. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Monster movies. Big fan of monster movies. I think a lot of what I do, even if it's not necessarily horror, is inspired by the original Universal monster movies. It's the idea of kind of bringing heart and humanity to genres that are otherwise just designed to kind of like shock and entertain. I think that's a lot of it. Clone High. Clone High was a big one for me. It's an old MTV animated show. It was a big influence.
I'm one of the few
me.
people that remember that show. Like I remember seeing people tweeting about it, like screen caps. I was like, I remember that, and people were acting like it was some ancient relic that had never been uncovered before.
It didn't run very long. It didn't do very well, but yeah, there's definitely like a cult audience. It's coming back now. Yeah,
it is. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're bringing it back.
Dude, sick. Do you know anyone working on it?
Yeah. No, I think Lord and Miller, the creators, the guys who made Lego Movie and directed 21
awesome.
Jump Street. Yeah. They'd created Clone High. It was like one of their first things, but they'll be involved. And I think Bill Lawrence, who was involved in the first version of Clone High, I think he created Scrubs. Yeah, so they'll all be involved. Otherwise, no. I have no idea. If there's any chance for me to be staffed on it, I would do anything. So, but I think they know that. So we'll see.
All right, everyone, let's start a campaign for Ben to get on Clone High.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Hashtag, that would be a really long hashtag, get Ben on Clone High.
Hashtag get Ben Mekler on Clone High reboot or season 2. It's unclear which one it is. I need the whole thing as a hashtag.
Yes, absolutely. So Ben, we got a couple more minutes left, and then so the last thing I'd love to talk about is your Twitter account. You are super active on Twitter. You've sent
Not
over
good for my mental health, Trevor, but I sure am.
You've sent over 55,000 tweets. I looked on your Twitter profile.
Why do you have to say that? Jesus Christ.
It's okay. I've sent like 20 something. That's still a lot.
Yeah. Jesus.
But what is your fascination with Twitter? Because like it's a perfect playground for comedians, I think.
That's it. Yeah, it's just an instant outlet for creativity. I mean, when you work in film or TV, you're writing stuff, but to no audience. But I'm in entertainment because I want to entertain people. So I think that Twitter is a natural place for me and for other people who are in this business to have that instant gratification of having a dumb, funny, interesting idea and instantly getting out to as many people as possible. It's just that it's fun. That's really it. Additionally, it's a great place to get extremely depressed about the state of the world very, very quickly. just mainline harrowing news and panic and do whatever you can to try to spread good information and steer the wheel away from chaos. And then on top of that, honestly, it's like actually a really important thing for writers. It's a huge tool in getting work. I think I've met a ton of people through Twitter that I probably would not have had the opportunity to get to know otherwise. Kindred spirits, writers that are a lot farther ahead, executives that I just get along with that are funny, producers, actors that I've brought into projects and worked with, other writers that I've staffed on projects I've worked on or been staffed by. So it's a great social network in that way, and that you can use it as an opportunity to network in the traditional sense, but in a much more honest and sincere way, where it's like, well, the people that I interact with on Twitter are the people who saw what I was putting out creatively or just personally and were drawn to it or connected with it, or people that I could say the same thing about, the people that I'm going out to and trying to get to know. I think most of the good friends I've made in the last few years have been through Twitter. So yeah, for people in entertainment and for writers, and I imagine this tracks in other industries as well, it's just a really great way to meet people, get work, make friends, and just kind of make your voice known so that people think of you when they're putting projects together, which I would say has probably happened like twice. Actually, I will say a good example lately is that recently I did one of those things that everyone does where they retweet like, name a book you like or a book you'd love to adapt. And I like retweeted with a book cover of this book called The Turk it's a nonfiction book. I'm obsessed with it. It's a story I'm just deeply invested in and have been trying to figure out for a long time, like what an adaptation would look like. And the producer who owns the rights to that book reached out to me and we're talking about it. So it like definitely, things like that can happen. Not often. Again, I've been on Twitter for like 12 years. It's the first time anything like that specifically happened, but it's definitely a place to find people who like your voice, make it clear what you want to be doing, and hopefully find people who are able to help you do that, who are invested in your voice and would like to collaborate with you. But primarily it's a place to just do dumb bullshit that's fun.
Absolutely. And another reason I love Ben's Twitter is like, I mean, I follow a lot of comedians or like meme pages or whatever, but lately Twitter has been like COVID, look what Trump said. But my timeline's like COVID, memes, Trump said, Ben tweeting about Flintstone Hour. What can you tell me, everyone, about that? What's Flintstone Hour?
Oh, I had a dream one night. The Twitter instituted an hour-long period in which you were only allowed to post the Flintstones. And in the dream, it was like I was on Twitter. I was like tweeting with a few of my friends about something. And then we were like, shit, it's Flintstones hour. And we all had to go draw Flintstones drawings and post them to Twitter. And I woke up and I was like, that was really weird and stupid. And then I decided I would just see if I could make it real. So I tweeted that it was Flintstones hour at 6:00 Pacific time, and everyone could only tweet their own drawings of the Flintstones. And a lot of people did it. And then I took the joke farther and just started doing it every day for about like 8 days. And then someone tweeted that Flintstones, it was announced it was coming to Blu-ray, the whole series, and asked if I had like made that, if that was because of Flintstones hour. And like, look, no way anyone involved in any of those decisions even knew the Flintstones hour was a thing. We're talking about like 12 people were doing it, maybe like 50 people on like the first day. And none of them had anything to do with the Flintstones being on Blu-ray. And also it's already been done. Hundreds of people were involved in making that happen, and it's over now. They were announcing it because it was done already. But I thought it would be really funny to claim that it was because of Flintstones hour and use that as an excuse to escape from the prison of my own design, in which at every day at 6:00 I had to drop everything and do Flintstones hour. So I announced that we had succeeded in getting the Flintstones released on Blu-ray and could now end Flintstone Tower, and that had been our goal the whole time. And that was Flintstones Hour. And I feel like maybe every once in a while I'll do it again because it's actually fun to just draw. I'm, again, not good at drawing, and in 8 days I never got any better. But it was fun to draw. It's fun to draw. It was fun to see what other people were doing. There were people that were making like little short films. There were people that were making like full cutouts of like Betty and Wilma and dancing with them. And it was awesome.
I saw that a lot of fun fan art has been made from that.
It was great. Everyone did something creative for no reason other than it was fun. And I like that.
That is fun. So you like to troll on Twitter too. And I didn't see this happen, but my roommate Chase, he's like, you should ask Ben about, I think it was Frozen maybe. You tweeted something about Frozen happening. And then a bunch of articles like said, oh my God, can you believe this?
Listen, I don't like to call it trolling. Because the goal for me is not to upset people, which I think is the goal of trolling, is to bait people. Mm-hmm. For me, like what had happened was a couple of years ago, I saw like, oh, the Avengers Infinity War, maybe it was like Civil War, like the embargo is going up at 6:00. And I love movies. So I do track when like the embargo's up, when people are going to tweet about things. But I, at that point, was like, this always happens. It's like 6:00, the embargo's up, and then everyone tweets an almost identical tweet about the movie because you're all at a movie premiere, getting plied with free shit, talking to celebrities. You're excited to be there. And also a lot of these Marvel movies are almost exactly the same to begin with. and you're in this exciting environment, and then you come and you tweet about it. Look, not to say this is just Marvel movies, this is just blockbuster filmmaking, franchise filmmaking in general. Like, there's just a pattern where it was like people were just tweeting the same thing, which is like, this movie is really great. Some people are going to consider it their favorite yet. There's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of action, and it felt like I don't know. I saw that the embargo was coming up for like Infinity War at 6:00, and I was like, I'll tweet like a fake thing at 6, and it'll blend into all the real ones, and it'll be a funny joke to read it and say like, oh, haha, that's fake. I mean, I think I said that like Captain America and Iron Man fuck within the first like 15 minutes. That's like what I had tweeted. And then like 5 minutes after I tweeted, my friend sends me a link to the Hollywood Reporter, and they'd done like an article that was like a roundup of all the first reactions, and they just put mine in with the other tweets. So the Hollywood Reporter printed that like Captain America and Iron Man fuck in Infinity War. And I realized that every website was doing this. All these movie websites were just, getting hits. Look, that's the business model. I understand. But they were just like rounding up all of these tweets the instant that they went online and the embargo ended, not reading them, just immediately rounding them up and putting them into a series of links and putting the article out. And so then it kind of became a joke. I didn't think it was going to happen more than once, but eventually it evolved into a joke where like, yes, every time an embargo ended, I would just put out a tweet that sounded like word salad, but had a completely deranged thing that doesn't happen in the movie in the middle, just to see, to make people laugh. The thing has to be funny on its own merits or it's not really anything. So just to make a funny joke, and then additionally to see if it would seriously get picked up and how far I could push the absurd joke. So in the case of Frozen 2, I had tweeted that Frozen 2 was like a sturdy sequel, an entirely like serviceable follow-up to the first Frozen, that there was a very harrowing auto-cannibalism scene, and that the songs somehow managed to be just as catchy as they were the first time around. And it was in like Entertainment Weekly. And this is like the 80th time Entertainment Weekly just printed something insane that I had tweeted. And it's just because I have a verified account on Twitter. They're just looking at all the verified accounts and they're not. And it was like if you tweet at the right moment, you could literally tweet anything. It's gonna wind up in articles.
Oh my gosh.
And it doesn't even just extend to like that stuff. Like I tweeted a joke once that the reason The Irishman was delayed was because they had accidentally aged the actors back too far and didn't know how to fix it. And I tweeted just like 3 pictures I'd found when I Googled like baby mobster. And it was just like babies and like fedoras. And a website that is ostensibly one of the most prominent like Oscar blog websites posted it in their roundup of like early thoughts on The Irishman, and it wasn't even after an embargo or anything. So
Oh
like,
my gosh.
I don't know. At this point, if anything, it's a commentary on like the
Journalism.
insane ecosystem of like hit baiting entertainment journalism that studios and journalist websites have like created together. It's a systemic problem. And if anything, yeah, it's satire of that, and just the fact that like nobody reads anymore before they react to something. Nobody critically thinks when they see something online. They just is it confirming my bias? Did I want to like this Marvel movie? Was the first sentence of this tweet positive? Retweet. So obviously that extends to the Trump tweets, the COVID tweets, whatever's out there. So yeah,
That's amazing. But Ben has to get going. He has a meeting in a little bit. But Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you had a good time.
Absolutely.
I had a really good time.
I did.
Can you plug everything in? Like, where can we find you, and where can we watch Kipo?
You can find me at Ben Mekler, Mekler, no C, just like combat, Mortal Kombat, on every social media platform that I'm interested in. So Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Twitter. I haven't posted anything in a while because I haven't been able to take pictures. So, yeah, watch Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts on Netflix, and look out for other things that I'm working on that won't come out or get announced for a while.
Also, I just realized I was pronouncing it wrong. I said Kipo, didn't I?
Oh, it's fine.
It's Kipo.
Happens all the time. I think one of the characters might accidentally do it in the show too. It's okay.
Just like Han Solo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, Ben, again, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching. This episode will immediately go on YouTube tomorrow, just like every other episode I do. We post it the day after. Go to youtube.com/portabletrevor, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.